Today's excellent egg recipe is one of my favorite desserts ever, and I am not kidding. This is the kind of dessert that I had dreams about. We're going to Greece and we're making Galaktoboureko. There are a few different elements to Galaktoboureko, so stick with me. It's basically a semolina and egg custard baked in filo pastry. But there's also a sugar syrup that gets poured on top. That's one of the things I like about this dish because you can kind of choose how sweet you want it by how much of the syrup you use. Let's start with the syrup. You want about equal parts of sugar and water. I'll add some cinnamon, some lemon rind, and a bit of honey as well. Just want to throw this on the heat, bring it to a simmer so the sugar dissolves, and leave it to infuse. Now for the custard. The custard also takes place in two parts. We've got the semolina part and the egg part. So I'll start by whipping the eggs. 4 eggs and about half of this sugar, 100 grams or so. I'll whip that together until it's fluffy and light. Before I throw the sugar and start whisking this, I'll put together my semolina base. Milk, cream, and vanilla, the other half of the sugar. I'll bring this to the simmer on the stove and then slowly whisk in the semolina so that it thickens. You always want to be really careful when you're bringing milk and cream to the boil because it can boil over. Semolina can go in now. Just whisk it in so that it doesn't form clumps. That's starting to thicken now, so I can bring it off the heat, bring it over to the bench. The semolina is still warm, so while this is happening, I want to add my butter just a little at a time, a couple of cubes of cold butter, and whisk these in so that they emulsify into the semolina. So a fair bit of mixing that goes into this and can get a bit sore on the old hand. But once again, it is worth it when you get to the end. So now I want to transfer this to a bowl to help this cool down, because if you throw your eggs into your hot semolina, you get scrambled eggs. So into a cool bowl. And I'll just keep whisking this every now and then to make sure it doesn't form a skid on top and also to help it cool down a little bit faster. And when this is lukewarm, so you touch the bowl, make sure it doesn't feel too hot, then we can start to fold in the eggs. Eggs look good, lovely and fluffy. Now I'll fold my egg custard into my semolina custard. I don't want to knock too much of the foam out of the eggs because they are really nice and fluffy. So I'll add just a bit of my custard first and fold that in to kind of lighten the semolina portion. Another third. You can really see how much lighter this custard is becoming as the egg foam gets folded through. Took a while to get there, but this egg and semolina custard filling looks fantastic. And let's start to assemble. It starts with a baking dish, and I'll just brush some melted butter to grease the base. And here's my filo pastry. These are really fine sheets and you don't want to add more than one at a time, but just make sure you're covering the base and then brushing with butter over the top. The butter between each layer of pastry is really, really important. It stops it from becoming a big, thick, dense cake. It leaves it kind of light and fluffy in between. I need about 5 layers in the base. And instead of just going all in one direction, it's actually good to layer a couple at least across so you can fold it back over the top later. Last layer on the top. Now time to throw in our filling. And spread the filling out so that it's nice and even and flat. Now you can fold over some of this pastry that was overhanging the edges. And if there are any parts where it's overlapping, just give it a little brush, very lightly. We need about 4 more layers of filo to go over the top. The thing with filo is you don't need it to be perfectly flat. In fact, it can often be better if it's not. And for the top layers, very important, you want to be really light with the brush here. This is looking great. Now before this goes into the oven, you want to score the top of the filo so it's easier to cut later. So this is kind of the point where you get to decide how big your slices of Galaktoboureko are going to be. A couple of little diagonal cuts to make the top look pretty. And this is ready for the oven. There it goes. How good does that look? The Galaktoboureko is hot. I've got my room temperature syrup, which is absolutely lovely. You can really taste the cinnamon and the honey and the lemon. And while that's still hot, you want to get the syrup all over it. Leave that to soak in, and there it is. Galaktoboureko, one of my absolute favorite desserts, and one that I think you're definitely going to try. Don't forget to vote for your favorite egg recipe too.